first thing we always do when we get a new vehicle is vacuum it out. Common sense, right? Well, actually not everybody does this. And be sure you look for any coins or anything else that's valuable before you start vacuuming. Probably the most important thing you can do on day one is to change the oil and the filter, because you don't know how many miles are on that oil and you don't want to go around damaging your engine. Look how nasty and black this oil coming out of this engine is. You're sitting in front of the driver's side front tire, kind of looking up at the engine. So the oil filter is on the left, and it attaches to an adapter on the side of the engine, the filter screwing straight up. And what you'll notice as Kailey turns that filter around is that it has a huge dent in it. And just from where the filter is and from where the front pumpkin is, it kind of looks like the front pumpkin came up and put that dent in the filter. This is a very stock truck, so that's just something we're going to have to watch. We did warm the oil up fully before we changed the oil, but enough time had gone by the time that Kailey has taken this filter off that she could still touch it without burning her hand. And here's a close-up view of the adapter that the oil filter screws onto. Okay, what we're showing here is that we put some oil on the rubber seal before screwing it onto the adapter. Also, we did fill the filter at least partially full of new oil so that it takes less time of the engine pumping oil into the filter before clean oil comes out of the filter. And the reason we put oil on that rubber seal is because in the meantime Kailey had wiped down the adapter, so it should have been totally dry. And when you're threading the filter on, you want it to be able to spin and for the rubber not to grab on the dry metal. And we always just put our filters on hand tight, about as tight as you can get it by hand. This is how I've always done it, and I've never had a leak or any problem doing it that way. So I told Kailey, you can wipe that 100 times and you're not going to get that metal on the drain pan to stay dry, but you can at least get it clean. And it's actually just fine to have some oil. It sort of lubricates the copper washer around the drain plug as you're threading it in and tightening it up. And it makes it easy to get a better seal between the drain plug and the pan. When we were doing all this, we couldn't help but notice that one of the header pipes was pressed hard against the oil pan. That's not good because the header pipe is super hot and all it's doing is cooking the oil on the outside, but probably also on the inside. So this is an invitation to replace that header at the soonest opportunity. I suggest you do this immediately so that you don't accidentally forget to do it. Just go ahead and refill it with oil. The 360 FE takes 5 quarts, and after carefully reading the 1974 truck manual that I have, I think the best oil you could possibly use would be 5W40 synthetic. Here you can see we're putting in 5W30. After you start the engine, let it come up to normal oil pressure, turn it off and let the oil drain back down to the bottom. You need to check the level again just to make sure you've got enough in there. The dipstick on the 360 FE is in a really odd place right in the middle of the engine underneath the brake booster, but that's where they put it, so we just have to deal with it. Okay, another thing we did on day one was to replace the PCV valve and the hose that goes to it, because we were getting a significant amount of oil leakage from underneath the valve covers. That's a sign of back pressure inside that space where there shouldn't be any, and that can be caused by a faulty PCV valve. If you were watching very closely, you might have noticed that the old PCV valve was a right angle valve, and the one that Kailey's putting in just sticks straight up. Multiple auto parts stores show the one that we just installed as being the right one, and I had learned the hard way that not all PCV valves are created equal. If you use one that's not designed for your application, it may not allow enough vacuum to go through, and that can also contribute to having back pressure in those areas where you don't want it. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that the hose is connected to full vacuum, which is what that port is underneath the Edelbrock carburetor there in the front. The truck's battery had anti-corrosion pads on each terminal, but they were crusty and they looked like they got used up a long time ago, so we felt like it was a good idea to put some new ones. The pads actually came as part of a small kit with some dielectric grease and instructions to put that grease on the pads, so that's exactly what we did. There was a lot of nasty, crusty corrosion on the terminal on the end of each battery cable. We do have those round battery terminal cleaners, but the steel brush that Kailey's using here does an even better job of really scrubbing hard and really getting the crust off of something. I've never seen this style of battery terminal before, but they make disconnecting the battery or reconnecting it super easy. There was a lot of belt squeal coming from under the hood. I discovered that you could grab the alternator pulley and spin it without moving the belt at all. So we got a stick and pushed out exactly the way I'm showing in the video, tightened it up, and after that, no more belt squeal. You're looking at the mechanism for the parking brake that's underneath the truck. It's actually very similar to 66 Mustang cabling, I happen to know. Each one of the cables runs off to one of the brakes at the back of the truck, and there's a threaded rod with a nut that you're supposed to be able to tighten up your emergency brake. This nut was rounded off, or it got rounded off when we tried to tighten it up. So what we ended up doing was taking it off, taking the rod out, rethreading it with a die, and putting two nuts and a washer on in its stead. And the two nuts can be tightened up against each other as a way of locking them in place. Those are the things that Kailey did on day one of owning her new 1974 F100 4x4. I'd like to know what you guys would do on day one of owning a new old vehicle. Please let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. It is okay to set the filter down.
Yeah, it's hot.
In the oil.
Well, or it's okay to set it down on your dad's garage floor.
Yeah, if you're going to clean it up.